Hello, pro-life community in Ecuador and all over the world. This is our first pro-life show, this talk show, with a pro-life referent from United States and me, the host, Marta, who's gonna be able to give to you this opportunity to send all the Ecuador and all over the world this first pro-life talk in English. This is the first English spoken show, which is great. It's awesome because it's an opportunity to get to know people besides Ecuadorian referents, besides Latin American referents, pro-life leaders who have helped us all over the time, all these past months and past years, with all the life and family attack that has happened in Ecuador. My first guest, my first very special guest is Elyssa Koren. Welcome, Elyssa. How are you today?
I'm doing really well, and I want to take the chance from the start just to thank all of you, to thank the pro-life community in Ecuador for really keeping the fight alive there. You're an example to us. I work at the UN, and it's very special to see a country that's so alive with the love of the unborn. So thank you to all of you for that.
Elyssa is a director of the United Nations Advocacy in New York City, and she's an expert in international human rights law, especially for protection of life and parental life also. She provides legal support to protect and affirm the innate dignity of every person, especially those who hasn't born yet. She participates annually in the work of the second and third committees of the General Assembly, and she has been published widely in various media outlets. That's a very special resume we have about her. She's a working mom. She's a very special pro-life woman. She's working with the big enemy, as you know, but not all of the UN organization is bad news. She's gonna give us a little more about this. So first question, what is ADF?
Yeah, absolutely. So ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. I work for ADF International, and the work that we do primarily involves being present at the international institutions. So in my case, it's the United Nations, the UN, and we advocate for fundamental freedoms that impact the dignity of the person. So just it so happens that at the UN, most of those issues are going to concern the protection of human life. But as you spoke, a lot of it has to do with parental rights as well, with rights of conscience, freedom of religion, anything that really touches on like the pressing issues of our day as related to the dignity of the human person. And I'll also mention that we're an alliance of attorneys, so of lawyers around the world, and we do all of our work in partnership with other lawyers around the world. So it's such a privilege to be able to partner with you all, because that's really the way that we believe that the fight gets won, that the job gets done, is by working together across alliances.
Especially in legal issues, because as we has already happened in Ecuador, they wanna make abortion legal, they wanna make parental rights not the correct way, but it's on the legal issue that we need to be more, how could you say, more active and more aware, right?
And more united, I think, at the end of the day is really our best chance.
So how does ADF has worked together with the UN?
So we work at the UN. We're an accredited organization of the UN. The UN has a mechanism or a system where essentially NGOs can apply to be recognized as official members of the UN. And so that gives us the right of access, of being able to be present in various processes of the UN, to submit submissions. And we've been there for about a decade now, and we follow everything that goes on, everything that touches on the right to life, which sadly is actually most of the processes at the UN that we've seen. And so we engage, and the work that we do is primarily by working with the diplomats, so with the member state representatives. We come up alongside the diplomats and we offer them support. So half of that is legal support, so research about international human rights law to help them take strong positions in the negotiation rooms. And the other half of what we do is try to build alliances at the UN. So we try to connect different diplomats to each other, to other diplomats that are going to share the same national position so that they can take a stronger and more united stance.
Oh, that sounds perfect. Another question, what impact do the statements issued by the different UN commissions have?
That's such a good question. It's very common for people to think that basically the stuff that comes out of the UN doesn't matter. So we see that argument a lot. And the reason for that is that they're not formally international law. So the documents, the resolutions that come out of the UN that are negotiated on a daily, weekly, monthly basis at the UN, they don't have the force of law. So they can't actually tell Ecuador, for example, you have to change your law on abortion. But we see that it's the other way, and it's exactly what happened in your country. What they use is they use like vast sums of money, and they use relief aid. They use it especially in moments where the country needs it more than ever, like you all are experiencing right now. And so what they do is they tie relief aid that you really need with subtle or not so subtle pressure to try to force a country to change its laws and norms on very sensitive social issues. And I'd like to say that what happened to you guys is uncommon or rare, but it's actually extremely common. And that's why the resolutions of the UN matter so much, because of the pressure, often financial pressure that's behind them.
So besides Ecuador, was any other country that had this very specific, direct and bold attack against life to promote a legal abortion, or just Ecuador?
So that's actually what's really interesting about it, is that we know the pressure is there and we see it all the time. But in my 10 years at the UN, I don't think I've seen it as clear as what happened with Ecuador. So as we know, the UN sent you all a coronavirus relief plan. And on, I think it was page 22 of the plan, it asked Ecuador to legalize abortion. And it specified that it was going to send these boxes, the minimum initial service package, to Ecuador. And these are essentially boxes with all of the instruments that a person would need to perform an abortion. And so that was clearly spelled out in your plan. And as I said, I was completely floored. It's extremely rare to have such clear evidence of the UN coercing a country in this way. So that's why the humanitarian blackmail label is just perfect, because that's exactly what it is. So yeah, this happens all the time, but it's extremely, extremely rare to get such clear evidence of what the UN is really up to.
But maybe if that wouldn't happen in Ecuador, you wouldn't be aware of that kind of attack, and we couldn't be that, we could have made that kind of noise, not inside Ecuador, but outside Ecuador, and have these allies and get to know you and get to be a force, a strong force, a voice all over Latin America, because that was like the reference, example, and evidence. What bigger evidence than this one, this attack, this humanitarian blackmail, to be aware that UN is usually doing this, but this is rare. Just quick question about this. Does this blackmail comes only inside from the UN, or maybe, just maybe, to know Ecuador had something to do with it?
It's very difficult to say, especially since I'm not familiar with a lot of internal dynamics of your politics, but we can base our answer off of what we're not seeing as well. And so what I haven't seen from my perspective here in New York, is I haven't seen any official government response. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen either the government of Ecuador based here at the mission to the UN here in New York, or something from back home expressly denouncing that the UN has essentially done this to you, has sent you money for the legalization of abortion, in addition to money for actual coronavirus relief.
But we are actually getting the money, but thanks to our pro-life congressman, we are checking every now and then the money by part, it's getting inside Ecuador. We're checking where is it going. Is it going to any abortion promotion activities, or is it really going to help the COVID-19 people who got this virus? So that's what we're doing right now. We are getting the money. That's a fact. We are getting the money, but thanks to these pro-life congressmen, which are like from 137 congressmen, only 10 are really, really pro-life committed. And thanks to them, we call them our pro-life knights. In Spanish is escuderos. Thanks to them, we having this strong arm inside the Congress to be aware where is that money going.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, that's just so awesome. I'm so happy that you guys have that, even if it's a small population, that you do have enough internal accountability to really show. Because at the end of the day, we have to think about what is it that the proponents of abortion want. At the end of the day, they want to create an international human right to abortion. And the easiest and pretty much the only way to stop them is to have countries consistently saying no. And so if you have the evidence and the ammunition in your country to say that Ecuador doesn't accept this, then you're taking a stand not only in defense of your own country, but you're taking a stand for the whole world, because you're saying this right doesn't exist because our country doesn't accept it.
Just a question that many of the young people have asked: can the UN really make or change Ecuadorian laws or any country's laws, or it doesn't really have nothing to do with it?
So from what I understand, in your country, you have quite an active debate over abortion, and that's similar as in our country. You know, it's we wish that everything was coming down cleanly on the side of the pro-life position, but at least we can take some sort of comfort in knowing that the conversation is alive and that people are talking about this and that there is actually a fight. So with regard to like the role of the UN, I think that if you have this national conversation going on, and then all of a sudden people hear in the news, oh, the UN is telling you, you have to do this, it can be very persuasive. And people don't necessarily understand what it means for the UN to tell you something. It could just be a very specific element of the UN, or it could be a very ideological piece of the UN. In this case, it was extremely ideological. It was because of the coronavirus relief. So I do worry that the UN has an enormous amount of influence in these kind of domestic conversations, just because people naturally give it so much weight.
So it's not officially an issue that we can let the UN change our laws, but inside Ecuador we have, like you just said, oh, the newspaper said the UN recommend that, so we need to listen to the UN, and we need to because they are saying so. It's not the point. The point is that Ecuadorian laws, nobody outside Ecuador, not even the UN, can change them.
And, you know, in this, now that you say that, in this situation, it was the World Health Organization in particular. And I think that as you're experiencing a national pandemic and a global pandemic with so many national implications, it would make sense to listen to the World Health Organization. You know, people have the sense right now that they're needed, that the WHO is very important, that they're going to play a crucial role in actually finding a solution to the coronavirus pandemic. And so to tell your national population, you know, everything that they're saying is wrong is definitely difficult, but we've seen that in the way that they've treated your country.
No, it's really a tragedy, because as we depend or let the young people, society be very influenced by these international entities, and they're talking about Ecuador, they're talking about our country and our tragedy, so we must listen to them and receive without question, ask any kind of help or COVID relief we get it from them, and not to get the time to be aware, to double check every abortion intentions they want to do as it happened. I think the UN or the World Health Organization didn't expect us to react like that. I think that took them off the ground.
I think that's exactly right. And I've been checking all of the plans that have come after yours, and none of them have had the same language. And so we're dealing with countries that have similar situations, you know, similar problems with the pandemic, restrictions, either highly restricted abortion laws or no abortion whatsoever, but they're not saying the same thing. So I think you definitely put a pause on that whole thing for them, definitely.
That's very interesting. You said a pause, not stop. That will be the main goal, the perfect goal, but to pause. It means that it's not going to stop. It's going to keep coming and coming and coming, and a different attack. If they had the nerve to attack us as a humanitarian blackmail during a specific tragedy, as this global pandemic, what can they do? What can they do without in a normal situation?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We can't lose hope, but we do need to understand that this is always going to be kind of the way that the UN operates until we see really drastic change from the inside out. A lot of that, sadly, is that this is partially the way that the UN was designed to be. So, you know, we all have a huge affection for the international human rights movement. And the goal for being part of the UN, for all of us that are working in defense of human rights, is to bring us back to the way that the International Human Rights Project was meant to be. But at the same time, we also see that there are elements of the UN. So I would pull out UNFPA, it's the United Nations Fund for Population. And if you read about the history of that agency, it really was created for the purpose of reducing population in the world. And that was there from the 1960s, from very early on. And they've carried way through. So they've called it different things over the years. Now they don't really speak about reducing population, they speak about women's rights. But we know that at the end of the day, they're really still pushing the same agenda. So it is always going to be this way. And I think the surest answer is to keep the fight alive at the level of the countries, which is exactly what you're doing. So to keep the pro-life voice alive and present, and to make sure that there's always a pushback against what the UN is trying to do in this regard.
And as the pro-life movement in Ecuador, we have been working, we have many, many leaders all over the cities in Ecuador that has been working after years, many years. And how in these 10 years, maybe have you heard, or have you noticed the pro-life movement in Ecuador is getting stronger and stronger? How can you realize from outside our perspective, the pro-life movement is really a blocking point in Ecuador?
So now is certainly the clearest moment that I've seen it. So like I've said, I've been at the UN 10 years. And the processes that I participate in the UN, all of the countries that get involved, they do so on a pretty much a voluntary basis. So countries get involved in the negotiations if they have enough diplomats, if it's important for their government, if they're really paying attention to something, and then often they're just not paying attention. So I am sorry to say that for a lot of the time that I've been at the UN, I haven't seen a very strong pro-life Ecuadorian presence. So, you know, there's many opportunities where even a small country, from the biggest to the smallest, any country can just show up and say, we don't like this. And the whole process should change because of that country. There have been moments, I remember in particular, there was a session, I think it was 2016, where Ecuador came in very, very strong, and it had a big impact. It really did. They came in very strong with a very clear position, and it did change the course of the document and the course of the entire session. What we need from Ecuador and for countries like yours is consistency. And I know that's hard when you have a huge domestic fight going on in your country, but to advocate for a strong Ecuadorian presence at the UN on the life issue, and to make the argument that enhances your position on the international stage. It's better for Ecuador to be at the UN every day, taking a position in defense of its national laws, than it is just to let the UN do whatever it wants and violate its sovereignty in that way.
Just a quick question about that. For everybody who's watching this, how easy is for anybody to go to or be part of this, not even going to a UN commission, but supporting people who is going? How can we be more involved in this process?
Yeah, there's a lot of organizations like ours, a lot of pro-life organizations in particular, that have extra passes. And I'd say that's the easiest way to just come to the UN and hang out and support us and support all the other diplomats that are there. So usually for a session, you just kind of have to sign up, you get in touch with one of us, you sign up and you can come. And first, I think it's an amazing learning experience. When people show up at the UN, when I first came to the UN, you wouldn't believe the pressure that these diplomats and that these countries are under. So it's very valuable just to see the abortion fight at the international level. And then second of all, you can actually help. So it's amazing to have conversations with diplomats, to have conversations with other civil society, other representatives, especially young people. I think there's something really valuable about seeing a young people that's so passionate about the right to life, and then to speak to not only your own government representative, but to speak to representatives from other countries that are trying to do the right thing, but they don't see a lot of people that support them. So it's a really awesome place to be.
So how can we, citizens can support them besides not going, but supporting, as I mentioned before, supporting those who are going? How can we, from our citizenship, citizen daily basis, can we support or be more aware in Ecuador or demand, who can we demand to be this stronger voice as we were in 2016 and now to 2020, or be more aware in the coming years?
I think that's exactly the question. So I'm so happy that we know each other now. So our job is to be here and to kind of be looking through the resolutions and to see what's coming up. But then we need you guys, because we need accountability back at home. And it's not unique to your country. It's the same in every country, where the diplomats come here and they get instructions from their capital, and then they have to execute their instructions. And so your job would be to make sure that the instructions are possible. So that's being aware of the processes, which we can of course help you with, but then being that voice to your government representatives back home. So to your foreign ministry would be the most important place to have the conversation, and to say, we know that this big process is happening at the UN, it's concerning women's issues, and we want to make sure that Ecuador takes a pro-life position. And then just to stay on that, to keep that message in the media, to keep that message in the news as much as possible is really important.
That's a very good way we can work together between not only Ecuador and United States, but different countries getting more involved in these international entities that maybe weren't founded to promote abortion or to kill babies or kill human lives, but to preserve them. And something in the way got the wrong way, and we let it happen. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that what you just said, like, we let it happen, that's kind of a difficult phrase to swallow for those of us, like you and me, that we're fighting this. But I think it is true. For the longest time, I speak from an American position. Generally, people that are more conservative, have traditional values in the US, don't really care much about the UN, or don't really care much about the international institutions. A disdain or a skepticism for the UN. And so the problem with that kind of worldview is that we just let the other side have them. And that really took place, over the 80s and 90s. There wasn't a strong pro-life voice there. And then you see that there was this kind of amazing moment where things really started to get bad at the UN with these huge abortion conferences in the 1990s with Pope St. John Paul II, and he, the Holy See has a permanent position at the UN as a state. And so you see that around that time period, with the messaging of the Pope, there was a kind of a renewed interest in being at the UN and in using the UN to do good. So I think that was very inspirational to a lot of people, and it's never too late. It just took a while to kind of catch up. And so I've seen over the years that, first you just kind of put forward like a little bit of a fight, and then, they're surprised. It's like you were saying with regard to the WHO not expecting you to fight back. They don't expect it. And then every year a little bit better, until the point where you're actually turning it back, and so that's something that I've been very happy to see at the UN over the years, is that, little by little, all it takes is a few countries. You grow every year to the point where you are actually able to see pro-life victories in the UN resolutions.
Oh, that's a good point and good news, because we didn't expect that to be heard that way, or to provoke that big impact outside Ecuador. We had many countries like Argentina, Colombia, Mexico got to us and give us help throughout social media, promoting and be part of a big manifest we sent to the UN, and especially to our chancellor, and be heard that way and have that impact in society. It was a big goal, a victory for us. And here we didn't expect to have that kind of impact in society, which means, as you said, that young people especially are very aware, are very advocating to be a part of something. Just they're not sure which part, the pro-life movement, the pro-choice movement, because they're lacking of values, family values, which is happening strongly in Ecuador. Family values are a very strong basis. How can we promote through those family values to be a pro-life voice?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's something that we are always saying at the UN, is that you can't take the fights and separate them too cleanly. So the fight against the family is the fight on abortion, and it's the same fight that we're seeing. And so it's all interrelated, and it's all about, ultimately the destruction of the family, and pushing this like radical autonomy of the child. And so, you wouldn't believe it, but to have the word parent, forget about like mother or father, but to have the word parent in a UN resolution is completely impossible right now. So, we've started this fight and we're actually seeing, really good momentum in this direction, but we have to see it all as one fight together. So I think the answer to your question, it's not clear to me how we fight it, but it's constantly reminding ourselves and each other that it really is an attack on the whole human person in the context of a family, and keeping the fight together in that way really makes sense of what it is that we're fighting for.
That's a very good point. And speaking of family, we want to know who is Elyssa. Who Elyssa is outside the UN and working. We know you are a working mom, a very special pro-life woman, but we want to know a little bit more about you.
Oh yeah, sure. I'd be happy to share. So my mom is from Cuba and my dad is American, and I am originally from Miami. And I have, like you said, 3 kids. It's crazy. They're all little, but I think that at the end of the day, it's, for me, I'm sure it's the same for you. Like, it's not a job. At the end of the day, I do this work because somehow I was called to do it. I don't even really feel like I chose it. I feel like somehow I fell into it. And so having my kids keeps me focused on why it is that I do it. And it's fun. I do bring them, if you ever come to the UN, you'll see that I do bring them to the UN with me from time to time, just so that they can see. But what's really amazing about my job is that I work with people from all over the world, and you see how much they love children. How much people from the cultures that I get to engage with, from Africa, from the Arab countries, from Latin America, they're just so excited to see children, and it makes the work that we do make sense. So they understand that we do this because we really care. So this is something that it's just so fundamentally important to us.
And one last question, how does ADF work? How can we keep helping you?
So like I said in the beginning, it's all about the alliance building. And I think that one of the things that might be interesting for you all is that we do programs, training programs, and we do them all over the world. We have, hopefully next year we'll be able to get back to meeting in person. So there is the plan to meet in Santiago, Chile in January. And I'll send you all the information so that you can share it with your viewers. But it's a training program for students, and you apply. The deadline is coming up. The deadline to apply is the 12th of August. And essentially what these programs do is they bring together Christian lawyers that are all looking to work in the same fights and the same ideas, to create fellowship, to create resource sharing, and just to start building those contacts and that base of knowledge at a very young age. So I think it's one of the ways that we can offer to you all that you can in turn start helping us. So you come in, students train, and then they become part of our greater alliance. And so if I'm sitting at the UN and I need a contact in Ecuador that's involved in a specific region or a specific case, there's always going to be that network in place, which is really helpful for us. So that's one thing that I'll certainly pass along to you.
And how often does these programs come every year?
I think the intention is to do it once per year. We have different ones here in the US as well. And we have them at different stages. So some of them are for university students, some of them are for law students. Later we have them for legal professionals that are already working in the law. So they're for kind of different moments in your life, but we do try to keep the network full kind of like at all levels.
Oh, that's great. We're gonna make sure to be promoting this so in order we can help each other, because we need young people to be more active and be more aware that the pro-life movement is not just a movement, it's a lifestyle, it's a life vocation. We were born pro-life, not only made, but I think we were born pro-life. How do you feel about that philosophy we have?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like I never, fortunately, had to really question the positions that I've taken, because I was provided with such a strong foundation through my faith. At the same time, I see that it is possible for people to reason to this position, because at the end of the day, anybody can change. And I've seen that at the UN, that the position that I have sometimes is almost the most dangerous, because you just take it for granted. And so a lot of the diplomats that I work with, they come to the UN, they're like, we're pro-life. And then the whole weight of the world is against you. So the work that we're all doing, I think, is really important to kind of fill in the reasons. So we all know why we believe it, but then to really kind of put it on like a strong foundation so that when we go out there and we're confronted with the arguments, we know how to meet them.
Dear Eliza, it's been a pleasure to having you at this first show. We want to share a last message, pro-life message from you to all over people, young people especially who is watching this throughout social media. What kind of message can you leave them with to be more aware and inspired to be part of this?
I would say don't give up. We notice you and it's all making an impact. It absolutely is. Even if you feel like it's all unseen, and your impact is happening so slowly and isn't really coming up to the front, it is. I promise you, it's all coming together and we're really getting there and we're doing it together.
Elyssa, how can we find you in social media?
Yeah, thanks for asking. When all of this actually started with Ecuador, I started to write a lot more and I just started my Twitter. So if you want to follow me, my Twitter is my name _ ADF INTL, but I'm sure that you'll be able to share that. But I'm always on there now. I'm about 10 years late to Twitter, but I'm constantly posting things that I see, that I hear about the UN, and God willing, soon I'll be actually back in the UN building and I'll be posting pictures and stories from what I see every day at the UN.
Dear Elyssa, it's a pleasure to have you once again. Thank you. And I hope this is not the first or the last, but let's hope to be more connected and have another show maybe in the future coming. So thank you once again, and thank you all the pro-life community in Ecuador and outside Ecuador, all over the world, who had been with us this 30 minutes. It's been short, but we had a lot of more questions coming. So keep in touch. Thank you, Elyssa, once again, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.